There's a lot of key ingredients we want to go through of a great email strategy because you're probably used to receiving a lot of bad emails. So let's run through some of those examples of bad campaigns, and then we'll look to the ingredients to make great campaigns. So the first one, this is probably something you've received all the time, is you were signed up to a newsletter maybe months ago, even years ago, and you get added to a mailing list. You don't hear from the company for ages until suddenly out of the blue, they start firing you an email at Black Friday or near Christmas, or basically any time that they just want to sell you something. They don't make any effort to warm you up, to send you valuable content over time. It's just when they want something from you and they blast out an email to you. And that's regardless of your recent interactions with the company. That's regardless of your relationship with the company. It's very value leeching. So instead of that, a much better option is to send a newsletter at a regular cadence. And that's really about using email to build that trust and credibility with your audience. You're purely using it to offer value and a regular drumbeat cadence of information that you're offering them. So you're building that familiarity with your audience. And then, of course, you can pepper in sales messaging in between that regular cadence of value content that you're offering. So to kind of visualize that, you'd have that newsletter drumbeat, and in between those newsletters, you'd pepper in a webinar announcement or a special deal on memberships or event sales. But what you're not doing is just that bottom tier, which a lot of companies do. They see email lists as this treasure trove that they just blast messaging to whenever they feel like it, whenever they've got a deal or they need to drive sales for the end of the quarter, which just isn't really a good way of treating your audience like humans. And for some more tips on that, it's better to start small and stay consistent. So don't jump in to write a weekly newsletter if you don't have content lined up for weeks to come. Start small and start with a quarterly newsletter. So once every 3 months, which is much more manageable. And then ideally, you can build that up to a monthly or ideally weekly cadence. And in terms of ideas on some of the content you can provide, it could be commenting on industry news. It could be providing updates just from yourself, interesting updates on what you're up to. If you need some kind of inspiration, you head to ecosend.io and resources. You have the Ecosend weekly newsletter. Please do sign up to that. We put a lot of effort into the newsletter, as you can imagine we should as an email company, and it gives you a lot of ideas of content. We'll talk about product updates. Mostly it's interesting content we've seen around the digital sustainability area that we want to comment on. So we're providing that content as valuable information and also just fun things we're up to as a company. So we're a remote first company, but whenever we get together for maybe Christmas or a corporate social responsibility day, which is something like helping out a food bank, or we like to also do volunteer sessions at conservation sites. So we'll put photos of that and we'll give information about what we've been up to, and to spread good word as well about the need for food banks in the UK, which is going up, or some of these orchard picking sites that you can go to as a volunteer. And people might just not know that. It's great fun. You can turn up for an afternoon, pick some apples in an orchard, and it's a nice way just to get out and about. That's the kind of content you could be using as that value offering. Tip number 2, don't treat all of your users as the same. And again, I'm sure you've probably had some examples of this yourselves from emails you've received where you are already a member or you signed up to a service and you get a bunch of emails trying to sell you a discount to that membership that you already subscribed to, or an event that you are nowhere near located to, or asking feedback on a webinar you didn't even attend. So again, that's bad email messaging practice. A lot of this comes down to bad segmentation. So to send great campaigns, you really need to know your users and segment them into smaller groups, not just one big horde. It doesn't actually matter how large your email list, even if you've got a smaller size email list, it's still important to segment as much as possible within that user base. And that can be from a number of ways you can segment. It could be based on characteristics such as people's job positions. You may have some users in your contact base who are very senior, some who are more middle, some who are more junior. Could be company size. Some of them you could be speaking to large corporates. Some of your users might be in startups. So the messaging that you want to communicate to them is very different based on those characteristics. Or it could be some of those behavioral metrics. Are these users paying for your coaching service, or are they a free tier? Have they attended a previous event you've hosted? Or not, because ultimately great email campaigns aren't just about the vanity metric of the number of emails you can send. They're about the performance of those emails. How many clicks are those emails getting? How many opens, or how many conversations are started from those campaigns? How many actions are actually taken as a result of those campaigns? We really promote smaller, more targeted campaigns as the way forward. Now, a lot of companies are guilty of mistake number 3, which is sending an email from a no reply address. So if you send out emails from a no reply address, which a lot of companies do all the time, especially the larger ones, it's kind of like shouting at someone with a megaphone and then just walking away when they try and reply. So it's just not treating your audience like humans. It's treating them as just numbers on a spreadsheet. So we really recommend sending emails from an active inbox address. In other words, if you send out a newsletter from an email address, make sure you can receive replies back to that email address. If someone actually wants to engage with you, it's great. You've got to give them the opportunity to do so and not just blast them with a campaign and a no reply. And preferably from a human. So we've seen from EcoSend that emails generally perform better when they're sent from a person at rather than hello at or newsletter at. Obviously, there's some caveats to that. But generally speaking, if we send out an email, we try to make it come from Chris at EcoSend or Amira at Phil at, etc. Because again, it's much more human to human conversation. And the third point there is to actively encourage responses within your newsletter content. Don't be afraid to ask people for their comments or their feedback. It's not just about you telling them information. You want to really create that as a kind of a back and forth conversation. For a kind of practical example on this, our friend Yuval at ethicalemails.co is a great example. So I'd highly recommend signing up to our newsletter. It's ethicalemails.co, just to really get a feel of what good emails look like, what good email campaigns look like. And Yuval really nails it when it comes to that conversational marketing process. And within her emails, she will have things like promotions and membership sales and sales process, but a lot of her content is value offering. Talks about industry news. She's a digital nomad, so she's traveling. I forget where she is now, I think in Spain, but you get updates about where she is. She's been in Palermo. I know a lot about her. I feel like I know her quite well, even though I've never met her in real life, just from receiving her email campaigns. She is a fantastic example of one-to-one campaigns. As you can see in that screenshot there, this is sent out to however many thousands of contacts she has. But if you look at that line, now over to you, Chris. Are you running any promotions? Still thinking about it? Let me know in a reply. That really speaks to me like she's actually written this email to me personally. So I'd really encourage you again just to ask for replies, ask for questions within your email campaigns and use that as a way to build conversation and build trust and familiarity. Now, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this last point, but again, a lot of these tactics in marketing are still quite ubiquitous, so it's worth touching upon. Really avoid the kind of corny marketing pressure tactics. If you're writing something and back of your mind you feel this is a bit cheesy, it's probably a bit cheesy. Best to be right. You'll see there some examples down the bottom, which again, you'll probably receive still quite regularly from newsletters you signed up to. But if you do send emails with characters like full case, selling fast, multiple exclamation marks, emojis, not only are they cheesy, and when you receive to a human, they don't look very good, but actually a lot of email inboxes are now specifically designed to filter out that kind of phrase. So if you're using multiple exclamation marks, if you're caps locking any of your content, that gets picked up by email inboxes. It's just not worth sending at all because a lot of those emails won't actually reach your users' inboxes. They'll get marked straight away as spam. So again, a lot of this comes back to that initial point of treat your audience like humans. Don't resort to fake scarcity or unnecessary time limits. If something's evergreen content or an evergreen membership, you don't need to tell people, there's 7 weeks left to sign up now. Slots are filling up fast because, people are used to that now. People aren't stupid. They know when there's fake scarcity and real scarcity. Treat your audience like humans. Don't bother with the spam. Be very careful, at least, especially in your subject lines, of anything that could be perceived as spam. And write it much more as if you're writing a one-to-one email, and then just send it to a larger audience. And another recommended resource on this is the Conscious Marketing Movement. This is run by a friend of ours called Claudia, and has some wonderful tips on how to really steer away from what she calls fear-based marketing tactics, kind of scarcity-based marketing tactics, to much more conscious, much more ethical marketing and conversational marketing.